Welcome, everybody. It's Simon Rosenberg from NDN, just doing a periodic check-in. This has been such a crazy week in American politics that I just thought it would be fun to get together and chat, offer some thoughts, take your questions. I'm going to be speaking for 10 minutes or so, 10, 12 minutes, and then be happy to open up to Q&A. And we'll do Q&A in all the ways that we do Q&A in this Zoom age. And so just hang tight, and we'll get to it, and we've got plenty of time to have a robust discussion today. So first of all, I want to make three basic points today. One is the Democratic Party is strong. Joe Biden has been a good president, and we are going to see the fruits of his important work over the next 2 years. And third is they're still all sorts of crazy, right? So let's go through this. Number one, we had a really good election. We gained a seat in the Senate. Despite the red wave talk and the sense that we were going to get our butts kicked, right? We outperformed all expectations. We defied history together, and we enter into this next election cycle stronger as a party, I think, than we went into the last one. We picked up a Senate seat, we picked up state house seats, we picked up governorships. We did lose the House, which is unfortunate, as we're seeing in front of us right now. But on balance, this was a very good election. And our basic take is that there were really two elections, and that anyone who's trying to make any kind of broad conclusions from the national data is misleading you, because there were really two elections. One was a bluer election inside the battlegrounds, and then there was a redder election outside the battlegrounds. Inside the battlegrounds, Democrats actually gained ground in very critical battleground states like Arizona, Colorado, Georgia, Michigan, Minnesota, Pennsylvania, and I'm forgetting my own one. There was one more in there. But 7 battleground states, we actually improved over 2020, an amazing performance by the Democratic Party. Outside the battleground, we fell back a little bit, and we lost ground in New York, California, Florida, and Texas. And what it showed is that when we run our robust campaigns, our heavily funded campaigns, we can control the information environment and succeed. We also now have, and we'll talk more about this in the Q&A potentially, we have, these robust campaigns that we have because of all of you and the money that you've been giving is also building unprecedented field operations where it's easier for us to go down into second and third tier targets for GOTV. And we also know that there's a huge amount of people that just are concerned about their democracy, who I spoke to many groups all across the country. Some of you may have been part of those, of people just who did the work and wrote the postcards and did the texting and gave the money, and because they cared about their country and they were acting like patriots. All of that whole ecosystem of the Democratic thing is very strong right now, and I think it's going to be very difficult for the Republicans to match it in the next election cycle. And that in many of the House and Senate races, we dramatically outspent the Republicans. But where we didn't have that apparatus, all of that money and the campaigns, we fell down. And it's a reminder that the right-wing noise machine is still very strong, and we have to get much more intentional about countering and even defeating that right-wing noise machine in the coming years. And I've been writing a lot about that, and we'll be announcing more about that in the coming days. Next is that we go into this next cycle, I think, because we were stronger in the battlegrounds. I do believe that we're favored to win the presidential race, whoever our nominee is, and it's Joe Biden's nomination if he wants it. If it isn't, we'll have an open and vigorous primary that I think would be, reinvigorating for the Democratic Party. And we have in the House, I think, there are 18 seats held by Biden seats that are held by Republicans that we could easily pick up. The Senate's going to be a slog, and it's going to be hard because we have to keep 3 Senate seats that will be hard for us in West Virginia, Ohio, Montana, just because of the math of a presidential election. And so I feel really good about this next cycle too. I think it's going to be tough like this one was. But I think that, I'd still rather be us than them, to use that term that I used so much over the last 2 years. Next is the party feels very strong right now. We've started to see the generational wheel turn in the Democratic Party. Nancy Pelosi handed, in a graceful way, and such a contrast to the Republicans, handed power to a next generation because she felt that Hakeem Jeffries and Representative Clark, Representative Aguilar were able to handle it. They were ready. And I think, you saw Senator Stabenow yesterday retire and say that she feels like the people who will follow her in Michigan are going to be amazing and that she's inspired by the next generation. I've been doing this for 30 years, and I can tell you that this next generation of leaders coming up, Kamala Harris, Gavin Newsom, Jared Polis, Pete Buttigieg, make your own list. It's a long, big list. Reverend Warnock, right? It's a big list of people. This is a very strong Democratic Party, and we should feel really good about this generational transition that's coming in the Democratic Party. We're the party of the Clintons and Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders and others, and Nancy Pelosi will be giving way to a next party. I think managing this transition is really important. I think Speaker Pelosi demonstrated how important it is, and she's exhibited incredible leadership here. But I feel really good that over the next 5 years, the party that's coming is going to be equal to or even stronger than the party that we have today. And I'm really excited about that. I think it's going to be an exciting transition for us. Next is in terms of governing agenda. What do we do for the next couple of years? I think there are three big things we're going to have to do as Democrats. One is we're going to have to preserve the economic strategy that's in place that's been so successful. We're going to have to make sure the economy continues to grow. We may have a mild recession this year, but I don't think it should be something that's going to rock the world. We're likely to be in strong shape by 2024. Joe Biden's economic record is exemplary. I mean, we have today the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. In the last few months, we've seen both the lowest uninsured rate, the lowest poverty rate in American history. We've seen new business formation continues to be happening at an historically elevated level. Wages continue to be rising at an historically elevated level. The deficit has come way down and is below what it was under Trump. In all the ways that we measure, our economic progress, we are far better off today than we were. And we have to make sure that the new Republican majority in the House doesn't do anything to interfere with the progress we've made, interfere with the implementation of these three historic bills that we passed that will set America up to win the economic battles of the future, the climate bill, the infrastructure bill, the CHIPS bill. So we have to, make sure job number one is keep the economy growing, prevent Republican sabotage of things that are really important for today and for tomorrow. The second big thing I think we have to do in the next 2 years is we have to continue to wound Putin and to prevail in this conflict that we are now in with Russia in this sort of broader strategic context of the autocracy versus democracy battle that Joe Biden talks about. This is really important. We have to prevail here. The stakes in this are very, very high. And I think Joe Biden I think there'll be less legislating during these 2 years. It will give him more time to devote to foreign affairs and maintaining this global coalition for democracy that he's built so ably over the last few years. This really matters. This allows Democrats to really sort of get reconnected to what is some of our most important work as a party, which was the leadership that we exhibited during World War II in defeating totalitarianism and then building a global system of openness and opportunity for the people of the world. We've got to preserve that system and make sure that we come out the other side of this. This is big, important work. It's been the work of our party before. We're being called again by history, and I think we have a lot of work to do, but I'm optimistic about us getting it done. The third, I think, big thing we have to do is to fix our broken immigration system. I know this is, well-trodden ground and language that we've all heard before, but I think maybe there's an opportunity, given that Republicans claim to care so much about this, that we could see some kind of meaningful legislation pass in the next 6 to 9 months. The immigration system we have today is antiquated. It wasn't built to assume, it never assumed a million people showing up on the border and declaring asylum. There's laws that have to be updated, strategies that have to be managed. And also, if we are going to see 2 to 3 million new jobs created a year through the three big bills, we need more workers in America. And if we don't have more workers, we are going to, it will slow growth. And so we've got to figure out a way to bring in, to create more workers. We're, at the lowest unemployment rate in the peacetime economy since World War II. We're the lowest unemployment rate in 50 years. The economy is continuing to grow at a robust pace. We're basically running out of workers in America. We have worker shortages all across the country. We need immigration in order to bring more workers in to keep the growth going. So I think, to me, the election was a good one. We go into 2024 strong, stronger party than we were. Exciting new leaders emerging that we're all, I think, exciting all of us. And then we've got three big things we need to do. And then finally, I'll say about the shit show that we're seeing on the House. This has to be, there's a part of it which I'm sure for many, it's sort of like, this is crazy. And there's an element of this that feels, like, see, we told you so kind of thing. But I think I'm actually very worried about all this. And I'm worried because there are 20 members of Congress who now believe that they're in charge of the country, even though, they don't represent a majority of the United States or even a majority of their own party. And they're using illicit tactics to sort of push things past, what is the way a democracy is supposed to work. And there's no reason to believe that they're not going to do this again and again and again on things like the debt ceiling and the budget. And in fact, McCarthy has, just for all of you to do your homework, right? The part of the deal that's being done with the Maga 20, as I call them, that's the most dangerous and pernicious, is their commitment to balancing the budget in the next 10 years. And the requirements that they've put into place, which I'm not going to read here, about the way they're going to negotiate on the budget. I mean, what they're intending to do is to basically dismantle everything that we just did over the last 2 years, and to defund the climate bill, the infrastructure bill, the CHIPS bill, and to basically defund the government. And if we don't agree to that, they're going to shut the government down and create a global economic crisis. This is as clear as day. There should be no illusions about this. The insurrection and the attack on our democracy and our government that began 2 years ago today is continuing in another form, this time inside the Capitol, not outside. And there is lots of danger here. And I don't think that we should be under any illusion about the willingness of this group, this nihilistic group, to pull the pin on the grenade, on the American grenade. They're pulling it on their own party. They're certainly going to be willing to do it to Joe Biden. And so, our work in defeating MAGA, in ridding the country of this threat is undone. We still have work to do. We've made incredible progress. We've had 3 very successful elections. I'm proud of the Democratic Party. I'm proud of my president. I'm proud of all of you for all the work that we did to put us in this position where MAGA doesn't even have more power than it does already. But we still have a lot of work to do. And this is going to be, we have to, take the wins and acknowledge the things that went really well, which many things have gone very well. Joe Biden's been a good president. We've been a successful party. The country is better off than it was. But the threat that MAGA represents here in the United States, the threat that Putin and Xi represent abroad, these are still imminent threats that we can't cower from, and we have to face, frontally and with courage, as in the weeks and months ahead. And so lots of good news, lots to celebrate, but lots of work to do. So that's my overview. Let me go to some Q&A. I'm going to take some written questions first. And thanks everybody. And listen, let me just say one last thing. Many of you may be new to me and new to NDN. I met a lot of new people along the way in the last 6 months in this crazy journey I've been on. And I just want to say this has been some of the most rewarding work in my lifetime, in part because I've been able to work so closely with so many amazing people that I've met. Proud patriots, doing their work, going to work every day for their country. It's been awesome to hang out with all of you over the last 6 months, and just so you know, your passion, intensity, patriotism, love of country really is the fuel that's kept me going over the last 6 months. And so I just want to say thanks to everybody. Let me go to questions. There's no, a bunch of the questions here, that the initial questions are about this ability of the Republicans to blow up the system. It's a problem. It's a problem. It's a big problem. It's a big problem. And, they control the Congress of the United States. It's an important responsibility. They've already demonstrated that they're not going to take that responsibility seriously. And they don't necessarily have the ability to pass new legislation, but they do have the power to try to unravel what's already been done, because they have to. We need a budget, and it's why in an ideal world, what would have happened in the last week, which in an ideal world, which we don't live in, there would have been some kind of power sharing arrangement where we would have been able to marginalize the votes of these 20, so that they didn't have the ability to negotiate through the debt ceiling and basically hold the entire global economy, hostage. But here we are. And, what we have to keep doing is believing and hoping that, unlike Kevin McCarthy, reasonable Republicans will continue to stare down and be more courageous in fighting the extremists in their own party. What was interesting is, in the midst of this insanity, you saw Mitch McConnell yesterday, traveling with the president, or I guess was it Wednesday, traveling with the president to go to Kentucky. Another Republican governor there with him, exhibiting, the sense of bipartisanship that we can get things done together. It was a clear contrast that McConnell was establishing to what was happening on the House side. And so, what is it going to take for Republicans to have more courage to take on Getz and the extremists? I don't know, but I will say that we have to look back over the last year and acknowledge that there have been some Republicans who've been courageous. Adam Kinzinger, Liz Cheney, my friend Bill Kristol, who ran an organization that spent $10 million telling Republicans not to vote Republican. This never Trumper wing, or this never MAGA wing of the Republican Party, is growing, and it's stronger, and there's more institutional support underneath it. One of the reasons we did so well in this election is that there was a lot of permission structures created for Republicans around the country to not vote Republican. And we need, as Democrats, to be smart. We need to build this big, broad coalition that includes the never MAGA, the never Trumpers, and keep this coalition together in order to, to deny them as much power as possible, and eventually to continue to cause so much electoral and public opinion pain that Republicans abandon someday MAGA and return to something more like a traditional center-right party. I think, but we need help, right? This is not something Democrats can do on their own. And there are a lot of Republicans who are working hard to do this. We have to give them credit. It's just not enough. And Kevin McCarthy certainly demonstrated in the last few days that he is a man without courage and integrity, and he's let the country down by giving in to sort of outrageous demands by reckless and irresponsible people. And so, this is not a good outcome for the country, what's happened this week. What will be interesting is we will start to see in polls, I think, very soon, because the Republicans in the House Republicans were already about 10 points more disliked than the Democrats in the House. The question is, are we going to start to see that being 15, 20%? Are they going to start getting really worried about how this thing that just happened over this week has really further tainted them and weakened them? And what will they do about it? And the problem is that McCarthy is in the process of giving away power to this MAGA 20 in a way that they won't be able to pull back potentially. So I think that a weak leader has made unfortunate concessions to extremists, and it's not just going to hurt the Republicans, it's going to hurt all of us. And we have to continue to demand that the Republican Party do better for us and for the country, right? They have let us down repeatedly by giving in to extremists, and we have to demand more out of them than we, continue to demand more out of them. Let me go to a couple more. Yeah, I mean, look, if you go to there's some questions about the economy. I talked about that briefly. All of you, those of you who know me, who know me from years past, know that, one of my main projects is this thing called With Democrats, Things Get Better. If you haven't watched that video, I encourage you to do so. And I've been arguing for years that Democrats need to get more intentional about winning the economic argument with the Republicans. I laid out a whole thread today on Twitter on that. That's the core of what my whole presentation's about. I'm going to continue to be very vocal in my advocacy for that. Sorry that I'm having focus problems. I'm not really sure what's going on with the recording here today. I am going to be fixing up this room, by the way, finally. It's just I had to get through the election. Here, let me move back. Does that help? Okay, there it is. And so we, we should have a party-wide goal of deciding that we're going to win the economic argument with the Republicans. I mean, we were down on the economy to Republicans by 5, 10, 15 points throughout the last cycle. We can't get to where we want to go as a national party if we're losing the economic argument. It's still the number one issue for voters, right? And so one of the things we've done is we've provided tools for Democrats to win the economic argument. The data that we provided today, the analysis that we provided today, which was widely tweeted out by the White House and by Jamie Harrison and by others, is a set of stats and statistics that were put out for you so you can become an information warrior. I mean, one of the things I'm going to ask, there are 112 people on the call right now, and I'm going to ask something of all of you, which is I want you to start thinking of yourself as an information warrior for democracy. That in addition to all the ways that you engage and you help your country, we have to take back the national discourse from Fox News and the right. They're just louder than we are. They're more organized. They're not better than we are, right? We govern well. We're a virtuous party, but they're louder than we are. And we have to get louder. And some of that is our leaders, but some of that is also us understanding that one of the great advantages they have is that they are both networked and amplified. And what that means is that there are millions of Republicans who get up every day who've been told by their leaders that the national media is against them, and that in order to get the Republican message out, they have to share it through their networks every day. And they do. And so a Fox News clip that reaches 1 million people is then tweeted and Instagrammed and out through all of the various way we move stuff, to 5 million people, 6 million people. They're networked and they're amplified. We aren't. We just aren't. And it's time now. And we all can begin that process ourselves, right? I'm just a private citizen. I'm not an elected official. I'm just a guy, right? And, and I'm just doing this work, and you guys are here with me today. And, join me in being an information warrior, right? Join me in learning the data, learning the arguments, and flooding it through your networks the way that I do, right? We all can do this. This is what being a good patriot and good citizen means now, in an age when our discourse has been hijacked by Fox News and by noisy right-wing sources. One of the reasons we did so well in this election is that because of the money you gave to everybody, our campaigns had more money than they did, so we can control the information environment. When we control the information environment, we win. When we don't, we have setbacks. So controlling the information environment, or at least improving, being more competitive in the information environment, is a hugely important tactical thing we have to do. But it's not something that other people have to do. It's something we have to do ourselves and think of ourselves differently, right? And there have been people in our party who talk about Twitter and blah, 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 blah. All these are just tools to move arguments through the system. I mean, I'm an old war room guy from 1992, and and I believe you got to contest every day. You got to fight it out every day. We were information warriors back in 1992, and we need to do it again. And we need 2 to 3 million people challenging the ability every day of the right to dominate our discourse. We have to take our discourse back. I think we can do it. And I'm certainly going to be agitating with party leadership. And I've already had many meetings with lots of people that matter about there being a real plan around this. And one of the ways that I talk about it is that, when we created the war room in 1992, there was 20 of us basically, out there fighting out, the daily information war. We now need to think of the war room as 2 to 3 million people wired together, networked together, amplified together, who amplify material going out, making us all collectively louder. Our campaigns have to keep doing what they're doing, but we have to do more. And that's one of the reasons you're here today, right? You're here, you're exhibiting your patriotism, your love of country by even being part of this, conversation today. Let me go to the next set of issues. Jan asked an important question about what happened with the skewered polls, the red wave polls. If you haven't had a chance, I should have put this. I'll put this in the email you get afterwards from Zoom, but it's also it's not even on my site yet. But the New York Times on Saturday last week, 6 days ago, had a front page above the fold story, which heavily featured our work about the fake red wave and the red wave that was created through a series of illicit polls by Republicans to push down the polling averages, to game the polling averages, to create a perception that rather than Democrats having intensity and doing well, that the Republicans had the intensity and were doing well. Well, we know that's not what happened. And that this red wave was a false creation by some set of Republicans where they flooded the zone with all these polls that showed the election was much more Republican than it really was. I called everybody out on that. I was the main guy. I just sort of discovered this campaign, saw what was happening. I was ridiculed and attacked by many influential and important people for smoking. Nate Silver said I was smoking hopium, right? Others said similar things. And we were right and they were wrong. And it's important to recognize that virtually every major commentator that all of us follow and respect got this election wrong and were bamboozled by Republicans who had flooded the zone with these fake polls that then gamed the polling averages and created the impression the election was moving towards the Republicans. Why does that matter? Well, it matters because the press needs to be better than that, right? They shouldn't have been bamboozled. I created lots of evidence 10 days before the election saying this was happening. And rather than looking at what my argument was and taking it seriously, it was rejected and ridiculed. So a lot of people had data showing them that this was not happening and they chose to ignore it or to make fun of us for making this argument. And they were wrong. And these are big, important people that you all watch on TV all the time, right? The second thing was that, and this is to me part of the power of the right-wing noise machine. The real story here, the fake red wave, was about the power of the bluster and the ability of the right-wing noise machine to push things into the national discourse and to bully them into the national debate through their loudness, right? An example of that was the Halloween fentanyl stuff, which was just like this craziest thing. But the red wave was part of it. So was that inflation was killing American workers, which it wasn't. So was, there are millions of people running across the border, which they aren't, right? Our whole discourse in this country is so distorted and affected by the loudness of their side, where they can push ridiculous ideas into the mainstream, get reporters to have to wrestle with them and deal with them and treat them like they're serious. And I think what we did this cycle, and what I'm really proud of, is we called bullshit on all of that, right? And it happened in part through my years of relationships with reporters and breaking into the mainstream media, but it happened also because of all of you and that you amplified my work. My Twitter feed got 100 million Twitter views between the middle of October and the middle of November. It's incredible, right? And it was we became the pushback. We became the fighters against the right-wing noise machine. But it wasn't enough, right? I mean, it still prevailed, and everyone thought there was a red wave coming, and then on election night, it didn't come. Still hasn't come. All these weeks later, how did it matter? Yeah, I think it cost us the House. I'm just going to tell you right now, and we could spend hours talking about this, but it's my professional opinion that the idea that the election was slipping away from us affected large donors and where they put money. It affected the party committees. It caused candidates to lose faith. It caused enough noise in our system that in an election that we only lost the House by a couple seats, by a few thousand votes in a few races. Was it enough to have pushed us off our game? Yeah, it was. There's no question to me that it was. It's an opinion. It's not data. It's not fact. It's an opinion, right? But I believe that in the way that I believe that Donald Trump wouldn't have been president without the Russian intervention in 2016. The election was so close that the substantial, massive investment the Russians made in that election was determinative in the outcome of the election. I believe that too. It's an opinion. I can't prove that, but I believe that. Yeah, the red wave thing was crazy. And trust me, Tom Bonnier and I, my partner in this effort, are going to be very vigilant and very aggressive. And we've already had some interesting meetings with some of the media organizations that were part of this, that we're going to try to give Democrats more confidence that they can go challenge this stuff more aggressively. We were too passive this cycle. We lost faith in ourselves. I think one of the things I'm most excited about right now is that Democrats, I feel like, have regained confidence, right? We feel stronger and we feel more muscular. If you listen to the language of the House Democrats on the floor right now, it's very muscular, it's very strong, it's very aggressive. I love what Hakeem's doing. Hakeem is setting an incredible tone. There's new language, right? This is a confident party, a strong party, a good party, a party that's made the country better. And we're protecting democracy against this other party that's trying to tear it down. I feel like they've done a very good job this week rhetorically, and the language is muscular and strong. I'm very, very encouraged by the new kind of more aggressive language we're seeing. Yes, Alex wrote, yes, win the economic argument, right? Natalie raises, Natalie Burdick raises something that's really important, which is this concept of normalization bias, which I just want to talk about this because this is part of, I think, a major part of what happened in this election, is that I think if you viewed MAGA as dangerous, and if you viewed MAGA as extreme, and if you viewed MAGA as the thing that drove the last two elections, it would be very easy for you in 2022 to say, I just don't think all these people that just voted against MAGA twice was going to easily vote for them again. I mean, that was the premise of my argument, right? Is that there had been an anti-MAGA majority. It just voted in massive numbers. They became more MAGA. It was going to be very hard for those people who were even disappointed in Joe Biden to vote for these guys because they looked kind of crazy, right? That was basically, I wrote that first piece in October of 2021. And I think that the media, the way you had to get to red wave in your head was to ignore all of this, right? Was to ignore January 6th, to ignore the crazy candidates, to ignore the abortion extremism, the extremism of the Supreme Court, the trigger laws, 10-year-old girls having to be forced to have babies. You had to ignore all of that and pretend that somehow the party that you were looking at was not that party. It was the party of John McCain, the party of Flake, sort of a normal Republican party, the party of Romney. That party's long gone, right? And voters know that. And part of what's happened is in the battlegrounds. Now, you've had 3 consecutive elections where people in the battlegrounds, the presidential battlegrounds, have voted knowing that the other side is kind of crazy. This is now built into the DNA of these regions. And it's going to become even that much harder for a Republican presidential candidate to overcome that fear of MAGA that I think has now been the driving force of the last 3 elections in 2024. It's going to be particularly difficult for someone like Governor DeSantis, who is in some ways more MAGA than Trump is, and who I think made a massive miscalculation in this election by running to the right. I think he believed a red wave was coming and he ran to the right. And I think he made a big strategic miscalculation. I mean, the idea that DeSantis is somehow some moderate version of Trump. It's just, if you believe that, you haven't been paying attention to anything he's actually doing, right? And so I think it's going to be very difficult for the Republicans to shake the MAGA thing in the next 2 years, particularly given that Kevin McCarthy has institutionalized the power of the insurrectionists. I mean, what I tweeted today was that the insurrectionists are now working from inside the House, and they seem to be trying to finish the job that they began 2 years ago. And I think that we have to, that McCarthy, rather than denying these extremists power, has emboldened them in a reckless way, right? Reckless, dangerous way, a sign of just extraordinary weakness and capitulation. Neville Chamberlain, right? Whatever you want to call it, whatever historical analogy you want to use. And it's going to be, but what's important for us is that have the Democrats in the House been shy this week about explaining all this to the public? The answer is no. I mean, Democrats are leaning into this really hard. If you watch TV at night, I've been really impressed with how confident and accurate, and I feel like smart and together Democrats seem right now. We're strong now. We know what's up, right? We're good. They're a little crazy. We're a lot crazy. And that basic frame is how we did so well in this election. And it's likely how we're going to continue to do well in the coming months. Let me go. And I think there were hands raised. Let me go to this. Let me just see. So Laura asked a good question. How do we run robust campaigns outside the battlegrounds, right? Should my group adopt a non-battleground area to work in addition to battleground targets? How do we coordinate? It's a great question, Laura, and there's no easy answer to that. I think it's just something we have to discuss, right? I think that, to me, the most important thing we have to do better outside the battlegrounds is we have to be louder every day. We have to be intentional about winning the information war every day. Their politics operates 365, 24/7. Ours tends to sort of gear up for elections. And we've got to try to be louder every day. The president, his cabinet, congressmen. I think one of the really interesting opportunities for elected officials, and if you're in a local area, to begin this conversation with your local elected officials, is they all have big megaphones that we have to all use them. All of us have to use what tools we have to be louder, to be louder. It's not only to sell our accomplishments and our agenda, but it's also to deny them the ability to push us around, right? And, when I worked at the DCCC in the 2018 cycle, we had the loud concept was something we lived by in that cycle, that we needed to be loud, we needed to be first, we needed to deny them the ability to dictate the terms of the debate. And so when you're loud and you're aggressive and you're forward and you're putting your story out there, when we worked in the war room in 1992, it wasn't about responding. It was about winning the information battle. The way you win the information battle is you get out ahead of them. You define the terms of the debate, and then you respond when you're attacked. We have to become simply louder and more aggressive than we are everywhere. And that will help us outside the places where we have robust campaigns. And one of the ways that happens, Laura, is by our organizations, our leaders becoming far more intentional every day about being louder and about being information warriors, because that's what they do, right? They're waging this battle every day, not just through campaigns. We have superior campaigns to them. And in part, it's interesting, if you read that New York Times piece, one of the interesting things is Mitch McConnell's political guys quoted in the piece, basically validating stuff that we had been arguing. And one of the things he said was that he thought the red wave and the perception that the election was going to be easy actually caused some of their Senate candidates to kind of ease up at the end and to spend more time on Fox News than going on and talking to voters in their own states or campaigning. And that was because the way they reach voters is through this non-campaign system they've built, right? They have this whole loud ecosystem. That's why Matt Gaetz, is performatively doing what he's doing, going on Fox News, raising millions of dollars. They have this whole politics that's not about governing or winning elections. It's about just performative appearance on television. And I'm not saying we should replicate that, and I don't think we should. We have to be loud in the way that we are loud, with integrity, with data, the way that I try to do in my work, right? Where I flood the zone with data and real stuff, not propaganda, not games, not sophistry, right? Not manipulation, but straight ahead government data. If you go look at my thread today, it's just government data about what's happened in the economy. We got to do this in our own way. And we're going to be doing an event on the 18th of January, which will be announced, I hope, Monday, that will be doing a deep dive on this with some really important partners. But this is certainly a conversation we're going to continue to try to lead in the Democratic Party in the coming months. Let me see if there's a few more. Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of questions in here. Oh, there is a raised hand. Let me see. Sorry about that. Okay, Jerry, I'm going to turn you on. I don't know that we know each other, but welcome to my world and dive in here. What's your question, Jerry?
There we go. Am I unmuted? I'm unmuted.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's again about messaging and putting a message on everything we do, everything the government does, that we're responsible. The Democratic Party and Democrats are responsible for all the changes that we're doing, and little labels on every little thing that we do that tells people that we and the our tax dollars are at work.
Listen, I think that Jerry, first of all, thanks for coming today and being part of this, and for asking a respectful question, because sometimes when I bring people in, you never know what's going to happen, right? It's one of the reasons I'm not doing this in meeting format, right? I do this. I want to try to figure out how to have these conversations in a more equal way. I've had it in the past where trolls have come in and disrupted things, and it's just kind of a pain in the ass. But let me say this, is that I think there are two pieces of this. I think that what I want to encourage all of you, because I get this all the time, why aren't we better at messaging? Democrats suck at messaging, Republicans are great at messaging, blah, 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 blah. We all hear this all the time. So my response is twofold. One is that I do think that the Democrats in Congress, as Joe Biden demonstrated with his trip to Kentucky, are going to be incredibly focused on communicating to voters about the three big bills that we passed and the story of the economic vision that's behind that, and these massive investments that we've made for the American people that are going to create growth and opportunity for a generation ahead of us. As I said to a congressional staffer I spoke to earlier today, no member of Congress in the modern era has had that opportunity, because we haven't had in 50 years the kind of public spending, public investment, 60 years, public investment we've made in the last 2 years. And so this is a new thing. People are going to really have to change the way they manage their congressional offices to be spending a far greater amount of time connecting the dots, what you're talking about, right, as part of what they do, because we're not going to be legislating that much, right? There's not going to be that much that's going to pass in the next 2 years. So we have the opportunity to use these offices as ways of connecting the dots for voters. And by the way, that's not just the member of Congress and senator. It's the state reps, it's the governors, it's everybody in the food chain who's a Democrat, who's going to benefit from these investments, have a national obligation to be aggressive about telling this story. And so in your communities, you should be asking your state reps and your city council members and the local politicians that you interact with how they're going to be changing their public interface to help tell this story. This is something you can do in your own communities, right? And it's not something that's being done by other people. It's being done by us together. We have to tell this story. And the second piece of that is, it's what, as I said earlier, is that all of you need to think of yourselves now as information warriors. How do you tell a story? What can you do? What data can you learn? How do you get smarter? How do you educate your communities, right? And whatever groups of people that you interact with who are welcome and open to you talking about politics, right? However you do that, right? You don't want to disrupt your life and your friendships and little league and all the things where you're not political, right? But in the places where there's opportunities to reach people, do your part, right? Become an information warrior yourself. And I think that we have to get out of this kind of passive sense about this, right? That we need to recognize we have more agency, that we have more power, that we can do more, that it's not going to be done for us. It's something we have to do. I mean, this is very de Tocquevillian, it's very JFK, it's very, not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, right? And I think what's happened I've come to this belief, having done a lot of these talks in the last 6 months, 7 months, that we've been conditioned to passivity because it feels so overwhelming and that we can't fight back and the noise machine is so loud and that we suck and we can't break through. But obviously that's not true, right? We just had a really good election. And we have to stop how autocracies prevail is when people give up, right? Timothy Snyder has an amazing line, Professor Snyder, who, if you all haven't connected with him, he's a very important person in my understanding of the modern world. He has a line that I'm just forgetting right now, but that, when you give up and when you stop fighting and when you allow the autocracy or the oligarchy to believe that they have won and there's no use in challenging them, that's when they really win. And I think that part of what happened to us in recent years is that we've lost our nerve, we've lost our confidence, we've lost as Democrats, and that we have become too passive, that we've given them too much power, more power than they really have. And I'm challenging you to take back that power, to not be passive, to not ask why my leaders aren't doing more. What are you doing, right? Are you doing everything you can? Yeah, I'd rather be with my family this weekend, right? Well, me too, right? But I'm doing this and we all have to do our part. Whatever it is you can do, just do it. And I often get asked, well, what's the best way? Is it postcards or door knocking or texting? It's whatever is comfortable for you. It's however you feel like you're contributing is what you should do, and just do more of it. There's no right answer to that. It's what is comfortable for you. Some people like to knock on doors, other people don't. That's fine, right? You've got a lot of people I've learned this postcard writing in swing districts. I think this is really cool. I think there are a lot of people who are, not in a position in their lives where they can go interact with other people, face to face for various reasons, right? Well, that doesn't mean they can't contribute. And so find whatever it is. But my message here to all of us is that we have more power than we understand. We have more agency than is often communicated. There was so much pessimism and negativity in our family over the last 12 months. Fuck it, right? I mean, we're a powerful, strong, amazing political party that's made the world a better place. We're part of an extraordinary tradition. One of the things I did the other day, any of you in the DC area, I encourage you to do this. I took a walk. I started at the Lincoln Memorial and went to the FDR Memorial, went to the Jefferson Memorial, walked back up, went down towards the Capitol, and went to the Vietnam, my way out, went to the Vietnam Memorial, and I spent time at each of those memorials. I took pictures. If you follow me on Twitter, I put some of this stuff on Twitter. And I spent time with the words and the language and the arguments of these extraordinary people that we're so blessed to have been here and done their thing. I came away from that day. I spent about 3 hours, a beautiful day. We've had great weather here in Washington the last week or so. I was very energized again. And I will leave you with this because we're getting to the end of time. And thank you for letting me ramble. those of you who know me, I can talk for a long time. If you need something this weekend to get you fired up and ready to go, just go back and read the Four Freedoms speech from FDR in 1941, right? It's probably the most important political speech ever given in American English. It became the foundation of the modern world. It's the Four Freedoms are in the Charter of the United Nations. And just live with the simplicity and the power of those four freedoms. These simple phrases that FDR uttered and the connection to freedom and liberty, right? It was so important. It became the exporting of the great American experiment to the rest of the world. It became the way that we translated our journey as a democracy. And in the revolution in the 18th century, it became the tool in which that became translated to the rest of the world. It became in the founding documents of the United Nations, right? It became the way that, and it was not about us dictating. It was not about us being in charge. It was not about America being a new autocrat, just under a different banner. It became about enshrining liberty and freedom into the core of what the modern world would be after World War II. And that work of our party is the most important work that we've ever done. The world today, the opportunity that exists for just regular people all around the world is unprecedented in American history. Our party gave the world more opportunity and more capacity to do and to live fulfilled lives than any organized political group in all of human history. That is our legacy. That's what we've done. And that's what we have to continue to do. And my wife says to me, when are you going to get a real job someday? And maybe I will someday. I go back to the Four Freedoms and what FDR did and how he unleashed an era of greater possibility and opportunity and can-doism into the human experience than we've ever had before. And people of color and women and people who didn't have opportunities have more opportunity today than they've ever had. What a blessing. What a legacy. How powerful is all of that? Well, is that world going to be there for our kids? It's up to us, folks, not up to anybody else, right? It's up to us. So go fight, win. I'd rather be us than them. The red wave may be coming, but it's not here yet. All those fun slogans of the last few months. This has been really a lot of fun to be with all of you. Send me an email. My email shows up in your thing. Just let me know what you think, if this was helpful. I'm going to be announcing the next few days a lot of events the next few weeks. And so get ready, buckle up. If you haven't watched with Dems, watch with Dems. It's really important. And let me know what you think. And listen, take the win. Feel good about where we are. We've been down on ourselves. We shouldn't be. We have strong leaders. We've been a good party. We're doing good stuff. Stay upbeat, stay optimistic, smoke the hopium, and let's go kick their ass. Take care, everybody.